Hello there. On this episode of Orange Truth Archetypes, we will be analyzing the Friends TV show. Of the Friends characters, we will be analyzing the personality traits and characteristics of Ross Geller. And then, based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, we'll be assigning him his specific archetype. Let's get started. First off, the ruler. Now, Ross definitely shows some strong ruler-type qualities throughout the series. Ross definitely has a developed sense of self and is somewhat pretty confident. Ross knows that he makes a lot of money and is very intelligent. Remember that he was constantly showered with many scholarly and academic awards growing up and was definitely praised on by his parents and possibly envied by Monica, and is probably one of the most intellectual / boring characters throughout the series. Unfortunately, not everyone sees Ross in this way. Ross is constantly mocked for being the guy who gets divorced, being into dinosaurs, and a sort of overall dud. Ross also shows ruler qualities by having a strong sense of right and wrong. In one episode, he actually gets Phoebe a bike because everybody needs a bike, and she has to ride a bike because the bike needs to be ridden. He also has a problem during the episode with Phoebe and the cat, where he thinks that the cat is just a cat, but Phoebe thinks the cat is actually a reincarnation of her dead mom. And he did not like it when they hired a male nanny to look after Emma, thinking it was weird for men to look after children. Ross is shown throughout the series as being against chaos and truly believes that the best course of action is to follow the rules. This, plus his heightened sense of self and his desire to be in control of everything, makes this archetype a strong contender for Ross. But let's see what else there is. Next up, we have the Jester. Now, to me, Ross doesn't really show much of a Jester archetype personality. He is the man with a plan that is completely goal-oriented. In one episode, he gets upset with everyone for not being ready, and is even willing to drink fat in order to get them moving and apologize to Rachel. Plus, when Ross is put in the situation where he has to think on his feet, he usually fails. In the episode with the leather pants, he gets multiple bad ideas from Joey, and essentially ruins the date and the pants. Also, in the episode where he gets a tan, he messes up and actually gets the entire front side of his face totally orange and kind of looks like a ripoff of Donald Trump. Even when Phoebe's dollhouse was burning, he did do a very good job of jumping into action. We know that he also gets angry easily, which although does hint at impulsivity, it overall shows that he may not be the best in quick thinking situations. He also seems to lack the ability to look at other people's perspectives and look at things from other points of view. And this lack of failing to understand others kind of shows that the Jester might not be a good fit for him. Next up is the Everyman archetype. Now, Ross does normally play by the rules and associates to the norm, but when the norm starts to change, he's definitely good at adjusting to it. In one episode, he gets very upset about Rachel teaching Ben about pranks, claiming that he doesn't like them. Then, he goes and teams up with Ben to pull a retaliation prank on Rachel. Also, even though Ross doesn't really consider himself very athletic, he actually goes and injures his entire body playing rugby in order to impress Emily. Also, even though he had been with Rachel before, he tried his best to accept it when Rachel and Joey began dating.
I'm fine.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
It's clear that although he does think himself above others, he definitely also wants others to like him. That being said, he also has a strong desire for others to feel happy, and often tries to get his friends to join him in academic pleasure. Overall, Ross usually tries to get his friends to be like him, instead of him trying to be like his friends, which is not the way of the Everyman. Next on the list is the Caregiver. Ross has 2 kids, Ben and Emma, so we see a lot of him acting as a parent. Ross wants both of his kids to grow up in a similar fashion that he did, so he pushes certain ways of thinking on them. He was made fun of for playing with dinosaur toys and gets upset when Ben plays with a Barbie. Also, when Ben is a little older, He dresses up as the holiday armadillo to teach Ben about Hanukkah. He also confesses to Joey that he does have a specific picture in mind of him having the traditional family. Keep in mind that he shares his son with his ex-wife and lesbian lover, and his relationship with Rachel is complicated to say the least. Even though he does have children, he definitely prefers traditional family values. However, he is capable of adapting to those complicated relationships, if it's what's best for the child. He doesn't pull Ben and Emma away from their mothers, which shows that overall, his preference is for what's best for the child, showing pretty good caregiver qualities. Next up is the hero. Now, Ross definitely wants to think himself as the hero. In the episode where it reveals that Phoebe mugged Ross as a child, it is discovered that he invented an imaginary superhero that resembled him. Clearly, he thinks himself as the good guy, or at the very least the main character. While definitely not optimistic and relaxed, as the hero usually is in certain problematic situations, Ross does have a strong desire to succeed and help others. Again, he was praised heavily as a child growing up and definitely showed a lot of academic success. And while this doesn't necessarily correlate to the hero archetype, it does show good problem-solving skills. He came to rescue the gang on the ski trip even though he and Rachel were having problems. One scene that I always liked is when Ross had a big brother talk. While he wasn't very intimidating in this situation, it does show that he has a strong level of concern for his friends and family. He definitely has the desire to overcome problems, he just kind of struggles with it from time to time. Next up we have the Revolutionary. Now, I like to kind of think the Revolutionary as the person that kind of believes in conspiracy theories. They're always expecting the worst to come, and kind of push people away before they can get too close. Now, Ross does show some revolutionary type personality traits later on in the series. In the series, he's afraid of getting too close to people, especially after the whole London wedding thing when he said the wrong name. Because his past relationships have ended in tragedy, he tries to take them slow in terms of his actions. One of the few scenes of him being a revolutionary are when his incredibly hot cousin comes over, and even though he acknowledged that it's wrong, he convinces himself that it's okay because he is so desperate for some sort of relationship. Then there's also the scene where he and Joey break through the segregation barriers at the museum. Ross doesn't necessarily want to change the status quo. For a while, the current status of society supported his way of thinking, and Ross is a person that is perfectly fine being in the mainstream, as long as he's being in the head of it at least. He believes in the system, and often gets into debates with Phoebe over how the world works. Also, in terms of breaking the rules, he's perfectly okay with it if it means he's getting laid. We can't forget that after Ross was complaining about people having sex in the library in front of his academic papers, he himself gets caught doing this exact same thing. So, while it might be a little hypocritical, Ross does show at least a little bit of revolutionary qualities, but let's move on. And now, we have the Outlaw. Now, at first, with Ross being such a rule follower, I didn't really think that he was much of an outlaw. But looking a little deeper, I decided to change my mind. Believe it or not, Ross does show some outlaw qualities throughout the series. The outlaw is someone who is free-minded and free-spirited, and Ross does show this in a few rare cases. After all, this is the same guy that got Marcel, a monkey, as a pet. He was also the guy that thought himself as musically gifted. He wanted to learn to play the bagpipes for Monica and Chandler's wedding. And he was the guy that greatly valued his keyboard playing abilities, which even Phoebe admitted to being impressive. At the very least, this means that Ross is not as cut and dry as everyone thinks. At the very least, he's oblivious and naive to his own musical capabilities. And let's not forget that even though it was frowned upon, he still dated one of his students with the disapproval of the other teachers and her own father, and to some degree the rest of the friends. Next, the master of the elements, the magician. These are those in the story that are considered very powerful when in the right environment. They have a desire to accumulate vast amounts of knowledge, but not necessarily utilize what they've learned. As a professor, Ross has this knowledge, but uses it by going on archaeological digs, writing research papers, and teaching at his college. He's attracted to people who are like-minded in intelligence level and value brains over brawn. Despite Ross's anger issues, he's definitely a person that thinks before he acts. However, Ross doesn't really show much of a transformation throughout the series, and this is what the magician is all about. Despite his age, Ross has already accomplished more than most have. He's grown up and gone to college, he has a steady job, 2 kids, and has been married 3 times, at least. The only thing that he believes he still needs to work on would be his spouse. Though this is an accomplishment at the end of the series, it doesn't really reflect how he changed or developed, and his particular skill that he's best at, aside from getting married, is essentially dinosaur facts, which don't really come up often in daily life. Next up is the Sage. As a professor, we definitely see some sage-like qualities in Ross. The Sage, after all, is a kind of mentor that helps others achieve their goal. They offer guidance, and are usually characters that are full of wisdom and knowledge that try and guide people on their journeys. Ross probably thinks himself as wise and wants to share his knowledge with those around him. This is why even though he has been divorced 3 times, he still offers marriage and relationship advice. Ross also believes that he is fairly well-rounded and can offer advice in a multitude of areas. One episode I like is with the Unagi.
Unagi!
Salmon skin roll.
Ross also seeks out others of similar state and mind. This is why he and Chandler are such good friends. Not only because they are roommates in college, but they can also relate to it in the fact that they both have somewhat boring jobs. Though Ross actually likes his a little more than Chandler does. He also enjoys being friends with Joey, quite possibly because he is the one that also needs a little bit of, shall we say, direction from time to time. So overall, it's a good contender for what he is, but let's keep looking. The Innocent. Throughout his life, Ross has experienced quite a lot in his day. He's loved, lost, loved again, lost again, loved again, lost again, and then finally loved again. He has experienced heartbreak probably more than anyone, even Chandler. He's also not someone that's quick to forgive. This is especially shown when his competitive side comes out when he's going against Monica. They have battled each other their entire lives growing up, and Ross is not one to resist playing dirty. As we stated earlier, he seems to be okay with breaking the rules from time to time. However, Ross is also the one that gets picked on a lot, and to some degree, I can't help but pity him. Thankfully, he seems to have the level of maturity needed to handle the situations that life is constantly throwing at him. But because of everything that he's been through, and his level of maturity, I don't think the Innocent is the best fit for him. Next is the Creator. Now remember, the Creator is the non-conformist that likes making things better, constantly improving, and doesn't really have that satisfaction of being enough. In fact, it's their fear that they will never be enough. Now Ross does have the mentality to be the Creator. After all, he kind of has this view of himself as being overlooking and a bird's eye view of everyone else. He enjoys the thought of being valuable to others, with what he offers being intelligence and advice. He's a person that does draw strength from others' approval. One of my favorite episodes is when Monica and Rachel go against Chandler and Joey to see who knows the other better. In this episode, instead of participating in the competition, Ross actually is the one that creates the game, that decides the winner, and is sort of the judge in his own way. Ross also wants to better himself, but doesn't really enjoy the process of self-development. He's more concerned with the end game. In fact, I'd say his desire to achieve what he wants is often what gets him in the way of doing just that. Plus, while all of his friends each have their own problems that they have to help each other solve throughout the entire series, I think that Ross is the one that experiences a good proportion of these problems. He does, however, have the confidence to be the creator, but only at a moderate level of creativity. After all, he doesn't really prefer to break the mold to create something new. Finally, we end with the Explorer. Now remember, aside from being free-minded and free-spirited, the Explorer also has a strong level of analytical skills, and Ross does have these skills in order to be the Explorer, but he is somewhat satisfied with who he is. In terms of self-discovery, he seems pretty content with being Ross. He does have an internal struggle with accepting the negative aspects of his life, such as his marriages, but he blames external forces on that. While explaining his divorces to a group of girls, he blames Carol for leaving him and Nevada for allowing him to marry Rachel, and only partially takes blame for what happened with Emily. He is not one to do something surprising at the last minute, and he thinks it's best to better have a plan. Very similar to Monica, so it could be that they both grew up with a similar mindset. He also has a level of obsession that prevents him from moving on and forgiving people. He also lacks the open-mindedness to look at things from others' point of view, as we previously stated. He is occasionally convinced by others to change his mind in moments of weakness, such as with Phoebe's cat, but let's not forget what he is most well known for.
We were on a break! We were on a break. We were on a break! We were on a break!
Clearly, he thinks that a lot of his success is due to himself, and a lot of his failures are because of others. This lack of humility and self-awareness may be that the explorer is not right for him. Well, after much thought and concentration, I have decided that based entirely on my more or less completely unqualified opinion, I say that Ross is the hero. Now this one was a very, 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 very close decision between two specific archetypes, the ruler and the hero, but when it comes down to it, I'm afraid the hero has to win the day. Now I know that Ross is not the traditional knight in shining armor, nor is he the main protagonist in the story, but remember we can't really have that since all the friends kind of share equal screen time, and because of his almost unwavering sense of control, authority, and following the rules, I did almost rule him as the ruler. But because of the plethora of times that he's broken the rules in order to get what he wants, I gotta say it'd almost be hypocritical in order to call him the ruler. Plus, let's not forget that the way that Ross gets his sense of superiority is by helping others and by offering them advice. Plus, he definitely has a strong sense of what is right and what is wrong, and he does have this overwhelming quality to conquer any challenge he faces, either directly or indirectly. To be honest, I kind of found Ross's character all over the map between revolutionary, outlaw, sage, ruler, and the hero, but we can't give them all for one character, so I gotta say the one that I think best fits Ross would be the hero. Thank you all for watching, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below, and be on the lookout for my other Friends episodes. Again, thank you for watching, and remember, stay concentrated.